Sure. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for inviting me.
Sure.
I'm a fourth-generation native.
Wow.
Yes.
Where does your family hail from?
My family hails from Old Mission Peninsula. I was born and raised on a cherry farm that my dad was born and raised on, that his dad planted.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you still there?
No, I'm in town. But we still have the farm, part of the farm. Wow. I went to Michigan State in 1971 when I was 17 years old. My suite mates were black. I'd never seen a black person really in my life, and here I was sharing a bathroom with black people who just happened to be members of SDS. So, you know, for me to go from farm on the peninsula to Michigan State University was just huge culture shock. May of '72, MSU was under attack from a bunch of radical groups. This was when Nixon was bombing Cambodia, and so several radical groups circulated that for every bomb that Nixon dropped on Cambodia, that a bomb was going to go off on campus.
Oh, sure. I remember hearing that. Yeah.
And so we had black rights, we had women's rights, and you know, I can't tell you how many marches I was in, you know, burning our bras. Yes, I burned my bra. But in May of '72, the riots closed down Grand River Avenue around Michigan State University. There were riot police on every corner, tear gas in the dorms. I mean, it was a chaotic time. And that's kind of what shaped me.
Sure.
That worldview that you could make a difference, you know, that you could change the world.
Yeah.
And I learned that lesson pretty young. I mean, I was 18 years old when all this was going on. And so even though I graduated with a teaching degree, and I taught for 10 years, I chose the law for a reason, because I thought, okay, I can get back to that desire. I mean, not that teaching isn't an opportunity to change the world, because it really is. But I thought I always wanted to be a judge. Yeah. And that's why I went to law school. So that was kind of that route, was from Michigan State, came back up to Traverse City, taught, but again, this was in the late '70s, early '80s, was having my babies. We had a big recession then, could not get a job. Gosh, it sounds like deja vu all over again, doesn't it? And so after, you know, a number of years of trying to break into the school system, which they weren't hiring because of the economy, in '85, I decided to go back to law school. 1985, yeah. Wow. I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and a husband, and we quit our jobs and moved to Lansing and had about $800 to our name. No jobs. Yeah, I know. Talk about your leap, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and I did it in 7 terms. We got down there and we said, okay, let's get it done. We want to do it and get back north. So I took massive quantities of classes and did the 9 and 7.
Oh.
And loved law school.
Yeah.
Best thing I've ever done intellectually. Absolutely adored it. I took advantage of every opportunity that was given to me. I was the editor-in-chief of the Law Review, and won the client counseling competition, and I was a marshal for graduation, so I got to dress up and help with all the graduation ceremonies. And I mean, I just did everything. I just loved it. I found the experience of law school to be so stimulating. You know, college was just like, you know, I mean, I just thought undergrad was really, I didn't find it a challenge at all. But law school was great. I loved it. Yeah. This is important. And, you know, the work that we do, how much more do we accomplish when we sit down and we talk? Absolutely. I mean, I just had a meeting last week in Cadillac where the judge called in myself and my counterpart for the department, and then the defense attorneys who do represent the parents in these cases. We sat down around a table with pizzas and talked for over an hour. But we sat down and for about an hour and a half talked.
Yeah.
What a concept. Instead of, it was like, have a piece of pizza and let's talk about this court rule and how we're going to apply it, or how we're going to deal with evidentiary issues, or what can we do to make things streamlined.
Sure.
Gosh, for the cost of a couple pizzas in an hour and a half of our lives, you know?
Yeah.
And
But there's a bigger benefit too to the client and the people whose lives are impacted by it.
but that's the point in the realm of the whole world. If you send out a bulk email to 16 people and they text you back within 2 minutes, everybody's got it in their, but there's been no connection.
No, it's true.
There's been no connection. I mean, I've had way too many people in my life die in the last couple of years, and I don't want to text. I want to hug.
Sure.
I want to talk. You know, I want to reminisce. I want a human contact. You know me. I'm a bit of, I mean, you sort of know me.
Yeah.
I'm not a wallflower. I've always been outspoken. I've always been
very articulate,
an advocate. And I just felt like my life experience, having been out in the world and having taught and having done a lot of different jobs, I had an experience base that a lot of the men who were running for judge never had, because they went to college, they went to law school, they practiced, they became a judge. I instead, you know, taught school. I'd been a waitress. I'd been a secretary. I'd been you know, I mean, there's just a lot of different hats, a lot of different roles that I had been involved in, which I thought gave me a much broader base to judge people. Because when you're a judge, that's what you're doing. You're judging people, okay? You're judging them and deciding you deserve a break, you don't deserve a break, this is whatever. So, I mean, that was kind of what drove me to do that. And I ran the very first time, 1 year out of law school, and I think I was the person who was responsible for the change that you now have to have 5 years before you can run. But I ran 1 year out, and I ran against Phil Rogers. And of course, Phil won, but I ran as a write-in candidate because I didn't decide to run until it was too late to get my petitions in. So I ran as a write-in, and of course, I was slammed. I mean, I wasn't even nothing. It was nothing. You know, I think that being that I was only a year out, that people kind of knew who I was, so there was at least that, you know. So before that happened, is when I left Joe. So I was in the process of, you know, renting a space and, you know, trying to get a practice going, and then running for judge as a writing candidate. And
it's a lot.
It was a lot, yeah. And so then I did get an office, and with another couple of women, which when I started, there were, I think, less than 10 women practicing in the area. Wow. So we were a minority. And then the next time I ran for judge, I ran for district court judge, and I ran Madeline Thomas. I don't know if you know, knew of her name. She died, but Madeline and I ran, and it was the race where Mike Haley was elected. Okay. So there were a whole bunch of us that ran in that race. Wow. Then the next time I ran, Shelley Kester was the other woman. See, the problem was, if there's two women, you cancel each other out. Oh. It's just how it works, numbers-wise. Oh, sure. So I became friends with Betty Weaver when I ran that very first time as a writing candidate. I mean, this is how naive I was. I called her up and I said, can I come see you? Can I come meet you? And she goes, well, sure, because this is Betty. She's always an advocate for women. So I go to meet with her and I said, well, I'm running for judge as a writing candidate. She goes, oh, well, tell me about that. You know, why are you running and blah, blah, blah. She goes, okay, well, you know, good luck with that, right? But from that point forward, and that was in 1989, we became lifelong friends. And when she was elected to the Supreme Court, she called me and she said, Cheryl, I would really like it if you would be one of my clerks. She said, you have got a really great mix of the practical experience of practicing law because you've been a practicing lawyer and, because you were on law review and, I know of your intellectual capacities, et cetera, you meet that need as well. Well, I had just bought an office building with my brother, who's the dentist, right? Yeah, so we had just bought a building together, and I'd just gotten my practice rolling in that new building, and she asked me to leave and clerk for her at the Supreme Court. Well, what would you do?
Boy, it's toughy.
And it wasn't tough at all. I
Yeah.
went and clerked.
Right. Did you
Yeah.
be down in Lansing too for it?
Well, she had an office up here.
Oh, good.
But I'd have to drive her. There were 3 clerks, and we took turns to driving her down for case calls. And so then we'd have to stay down in Lansing, which I left after a year. It was just too much. Plus, I was running for judge again, and I couldn't run for judge and clerk for her.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I had to try and start my practice up again. If you've never run for public office, it's an extremely difficult. People think, oh, you just run. But the reality is you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And every time you put yourself out there, you put yourself in a position where people can attack you.
Sure.
And they do.
Sure.
And there's nothing fun about that.
No.
And then when you lose, you're a loser. Even if you did everything that you could do, you still lost. And so, not that I'm a real quick learner, because I've I've run for other offices, and most recently just lost again, which is my last run for public office. I have decided that that's the end of my public service career as far as elected. I think I still have things I can do to be of service, but it won't be where the public has a shot at me.
Have you enjoyed it?
They've had enough shots. Have I enjoyed my public service? Oh my God, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, my 22 years at the college were phenomenal. I mean, the stuff that we did in that 22 years is amazing. My 2 years on the county commission. It was 2 short years, but, as far as I'm concerned, I accomplished a lot of what I set out to do. So,
yeah,
good enough. Good enough.
Well, it's changed.
Next person will do some other things, so we'll see what happens. But so the first time I ran, I don't know, I can't remember how much I spent. Let's say $700. The next time I ran, I spent about $7,500. The third time I ran, I spent $75,000. And after the $75,000 loss, I promised my husband I would never run for judge again. I basically spent my kids' college fund to run. And, so that was kind of a bummer because, mom's chasing her dream. Sorry for your luck.
But
yeah.
Rebel Rouser, you want to change the world.
Yeah. And
there's risks and rewards.
Yep. And I always told my girls, I said, if nothing else, I hope you realized that you go for what you want. You go for what you want. So.